Hi, everyone. This is Everyday Hockey. I'm Dale Beauchamp.
And I'm Greg Rieder.
When we were talking beforehand, we were talking about hockey parents, and I know that you've been a really successful hockey parent, and wanted to talk about things that you can share that could help parents, hockey parents that are just starting the process or just starting the journey. And if you don't mind, if you could tell me about your kids and their journey in hockey and what it was like to be a parent in terms of directing them.
Okay. Well, I think one of the things that happened with my particular family was my kids turned out to be pretty good athletes, but it's not by default. You know what? It's not accidental. I think what we did was my wife and I really made it a point to be intentionally active. We were a very active family, and and you know, our kids turned out to be good athletes, and hockey turned out to be the sport that we really focused on. We loved the game, and so we ended up having two really highly successful kids, and our youngest daughter, continued to play up until I think just last year. She was still playing rec hockey. Our son, and we'll talk about year of birth, which is sort of a thing with hockey parents. He was a 92.
Okay,
And
what does that what does that mean? So he
well,
was born in '92, right?
yeah, he was born in 92. And so when you talk to other hockey parents when they're young, so what's your kid? Oh, he's a 92. My middle daughter's a 96. So that's the way we would kind of communicate with. So then you'd know, okay, well, how old is your child compared to somebody else's? So
Ah,
as a 92, Andrew, really started playing when he was about 4 years old. So just, the year my daughter was born, my middle daughter was born, Andrew started playing, and he was a good athlete because we kept him active and we had him doing all sorts of things like soccer and, some gymnastics and doing all those kind of things. And he took to the ice pretty early and was a pretty good player. Um, Now, eventually, he made his way through minor hockey, got drafted into the Western Hockey League, ended up playing, for 4 years in the WHL. Played 5 games in the OHL for the Peterborough Petes. But he had two bad shoulders, and they were too injured, really, basically, for him to continue playing in the OHL in his 20-year-old season. And so he ended up coming home and had to have shoulder surgery. And eventually he made it to university hockey, and he played 4 years of university hockey, and that was where his career ended.
you know,
Um,
I just want to go back for a second. I like what you said about a well-rounded athlete in terms of not just focusing on hockey, because I know you can do that now where hockey is 365 days a year. I remember, I think Wayne Gretzky played lacrosse and baseball, and he talked about the importance of playing other sports. And how did that factor in terms of like with Andrew and then your daughter Erica and Emily?
yeah, when our kids first began playing sports, I mean, the first thing that you can get them involved in, I think, is soccer. Or it was like that was the thing that we did, and you know, there are some similarities between hockey and soccer. You take that object and put it in the net. That's that's the goal of it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but you know, Andrew also played baseball and played minor football. One of the things that actually he did share with us, his one of his regrets was that he didn't play any high school sports. By the time he got to high school, hockey was number one, and it overwhelmed his life as far as that goes. So he had some regrets at the very end. I remember him in his grade 12 year wanting to play baseball with with the um, with the high school team, and he wasn't really able to. He didn't make the team because he just didn't have that experience. I have to say, you know what, Dale, I feel empathy for those parents that are trying to navigate that whole what do we do? Wow, there's so much pressure, so much pressure. Play this, play this, play this, play this. What's your kid doing this summer? Well, my kid's playing soccer. Oh, really? Oh, okay. Because yeah, my kid's playing, summer hockey and all that. I remember one time we got an invitation from this team, and Andrew actually default he had a blue helmet. It worked out pretty good because eventually the Pats, that he played for, the Regina Pats, had blue helmets as well.
Yeah.
But he was always the one kid on the ice with a blue helmet, and the reason why I did that was so that I could find him out there. You're in the stands, you're looking around. Well, which one is my kid? Okay, there's the kid with the blue helmet. So, when we got an invitation to play this summer hockey, I said to Andrew, I said, well, what do you think about this? Well, they're a pretty good team, and then we took a look at the invitation a little closer, and what it said was he'll have to have black helmet, black pants, and black gloves. Well, at that time, he had a blue helmet and blue pants. And I said, I sent a note back to them, and I said, thanks. We didn't realize that it was a fashion show. And so he didn't play for them. He didn't play for that summertime. Not that he didn't play summer hockey, because it happened. Or spring hockey. It was like a big deal. Right. But eventually he did play some of that. But anyway, and then I'll talk about Erica a little bit. Erica, she made her way through minor hockey as well, and played midget AAA. Won the Max tournament in Calgary with her midget AAA team, which is a big deal. That thing is just legendary. Yeah. She went to a national championship with her midget AAA team, and got beat by a team from Quebec. And we can talk about that in a later episode. That's just a pet peeve gripe for me. But anyway.
We definitely will. We'll talk for sure.
Yeah, and then she went on to get a scholarship at the University of Manitoba. She played for that team for 5 years. Won a national championship with them. The first national championship won by a Manitoba team. I don't know if it was ever or like in 45 years or something like that. But anyway, it was like a big deal. I mean, they got, introduced the Winnipeg Jets game and all that. And it was such a big hoop-de-doo.
Wow. That was 2018, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I remember.
And then the next year, okay, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I remember watching her. I remember taking my daughter Hannah, and we went to the Claire Drake Arena in Edmonton, which is like that's a famous landmark arena. And watched the Bisons play against the U of A Pandas, which are another powerhouse team in university hockey. Yeah, sorry. Anyway,
Howie Draper was the coach there, and Howie went on to coach in the PWHL. So
Oh wow.
He was in New York for a year, the first year that they were there. So anyway, Erica, after she finished her Bison's career, didn't want to quit hockey, so she went to Sweden. And has been in Sweden a total of 5 seasons. She had 2 years off in between where she tried to make the national track cycling team. But anyway, we've had and I said my youngest daughter Emily, didn't have the aggressive nature of the other two, but loved the game enough so that she played for years and years. And I had lots of great experiences coaching her and watching her play as well. So.
You know what? Does Emily talk about the benefits of playing hockey? Like, even though she may not have gone as far as your other two kids, but how it felt and how much it's benefited her now in terms of even just conditioning, even just working out and stuff, or working, being a teammate with other people.
Yeah, and I think that probably she's talked about hockey as something that she liked to play, was a little more hesitant than the other two to get in the corners and mix it up. But she had lots of good friends from it, and continued to play. adult safe hockey, late into the night, and finally, this past year, I think this past season might be the first one that she hasn't played, since she was 5 years old. So, she's had a good long run at it,
Yeah,
and
because
I
she's
think,
in
has the potential to play again.
like, is she in her? She's in her 30s. Is she her
No,
late
no.
20s?
Emily is actually 26.
Oh, okay. So she's had a pretty good run, like 20 years, 21 years
Yeah,
of hockey kind of thing. So
21 years of hockey. I mean, that's a great, and again, like I said, the potential to continue playing. I think what she found was she's teaching full time, and found that the late nights were starting to get to her a little bit, and I
sure.
think you and I can relate to that.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I I was wondering about, because I know we kind of talked a little bit about, and I'm calling it like the modern hockey parent, but I know that you have a great story to share about kind of old time hockey parents, and
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
got, Well, I mean, you know what? Just to preface this before I just got to say that the one problem with raising a hockey player is that there's no formula. There is no formula. And there's lots of stuff out there, videos showing all these parents are fighting in the stands and all that. And clearly that's, obviously over the line. But I understand it. I understand it, how things get out of control. Because there is nothing that you want more than the success of your child. And since there's no formula for success, all you can do is work your way through that maze of options. I mean, yeah, you know what? You can make it a point that you never yell at the refs. You can make it a point that you never get into a physical altercation with somebody else in the stands over something that's going on the ice. But it's pretty hard sometimes to control your emotions when your kid gets, just leveled, or somebody, yells at you that your kid is being, is a dirty player or something like that.
yeah. I have experience. I remember, well, my son played high school football, and my daughter played pretty high level of softball.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I
Okay.
remember sitting in a tournament one time, and I was kind of just on my own, and there were some of the other parents from our team, and I was sitting in the stands, and they were openly critical of her. And I mean, that's kind of tough to take, but I just supported her as much as possible. But the one thing I wondered about was, okay, so these parents are being openly critical of other players, other daughters on the team. Is that translating down to the dugout? So did your
Well,
kids ever encounter that from hockey parents, where the attitude would go from the parent to the kid, and then it would seep into the locker room?
oh, undoubtedly, Dale. Undoubtedly, it would go that way. I mean, you know
Yeah.
what? If I was to say, if I was to look at what would be considered an example of a bad hockey parent, and there's no bad hockey parents. Well, I should say that bad behavior from hockey parents. I would say that when it translated into bad sportsmanship, because we saw it in the stands clearly, and when it turned into bad sportsmanship by the kid on the ice, that's when you knew that this parent is either going over the edge a little bit too far, crossing that line.
Right.
I'll give you an example. We had a parent, and I won't mention names because obviously it would be embarrassing for me to to
Yeah,
even.
yeah.
But
No,
of
that's
course,
okay.
I had a parent who would in the stands, when his child was skating down the ice without the puck, he'd be yelling his freaking head off, pass the puck, pass the puck, pass the puck. And as soon as his kid got the puck, he would be literally yelling, don't pass, don't pass, don't pass.
Wow.
If you can believe it.
Wow.
Now, here's another example. Um, one of my kids was playing novice, and suddenly the Hockey Association decided to have a novice A division. It's like novice major and novice minor. Like the better kids would play novice A. And I remember saying, well, I actually want to coach my child one more year, but I don't want to be responsible for this, heightened division where my kid is playing and I'm coaching him because that's what I want to do. I want to spend time with him on the ice. And then I have to make somebody else's kid way better or make this level of hockey, like the ultimate. And we're talking novice here. So we're talking, 6 and 7-year-olds. So I said, no, he's not playing that. Well, there was a lot of vitriol out there about that because, I mean, he was a pretty good player. He scored lots of goals and stuff like that. But there was lots of parents that said, well, the only reason you're doing that is so your kid scores lots of goals. That wasn't the way it was at all. But I remember running into that particular parent, the one who would yell, don't pass, don't pass. And he comes out of the rink and we're just going in to get our skates sharpened. He comes out of the rink and he says, hi, how you doing? I said, good. And he says to me, is Andrew having fun? I was like, I looked at him, what is wrong with you?
Man.
I was just like, oh yeah, actually he is having fun. So it's like it was the ultimate, and I said, well, how's your son's season going? And he goes, oh, it's so much better. Oh my gosh, it's so much better. The level of hockey is so much better. And I'm going, yeah, all right. Whatever. Whatever. But again, you go back to what did that teach that child? And there were some incidents later on, like you hear stuff, whatever, later on in baseball and things like that were similar, similar situations where you go, well, yeah, okay, kid was a good athlete and all that kind of thing, but at the end of it all, was what he learned. He learned how to be a good human, as well.
That's quite a departure from I know from the way I grew up playing minor hockey in the late 70s and early 80s. And I remember my dad dropping me off at the rink and he goes, well, have a good game or have a good practice. See you later. and sometimes, I'd have to, and it was a small town, so it was really good. You trusted everybody. And sometimes you just catch a ride with one of your buddies' parents or whatever, and it was all good. Sometimes my dad would drive other kids. I know it reminds me of I love the story of Brian Sutter going and trying out leaving Viking with his dad and his dad dropping him off. I think it was the Red Deer Rustlers he was trying out for, and okay. I think he left him at the front doors of the arena and unpacked his stuff and said, don't come home until you make it or something. And I was researching it a bit, and I think Brian was probably crapping his pants because he didn't make the team initially. I think he played junior B, but then 3 or 4 games later, he made it. And I mean, really, the rest is history. But I thought that was kind of cool. That was like burn your bridges, burn the ships, we're not returning kind of thing. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, you know what, Dale, I would have to say I had a similar experience for minor hockey myself. I didn't learn how to skate till I was 11 years old, and love the game. Oh my God, it was the best thing ever. But yeah, I don't recall having a parent at the game unless it was my dad's turn to drive, which I was told by the other parents, hey, it's your dad's turn to drive next week. So I go home and say, Dad, hey, it's you got to drive. And he, oh, okay, So then he would be in the stands for the game, but wasn't interested in athletics.
Right.
I'll get to the story. you know, back to that whole thing about, you know, what's the pressure? Well, in the summertime, you know, you look for opportunities for your kids, and here we saw this ad, and it was the University of Regina Cougars, or was it Saskatoon Huskies? I forget now who was running a hockey camp out in Calvington, Saskatchewan.
Nice.
So Calvington, Saskatchewan is about 3 hours out of Regina where we were living. But there's also a provincial park out there called Greenwater Lake Provincial Park. Beautiful place. We had camped there before, and had cabins and stuff like that that you could rent. So anyway, we decided, well, why don't we combine a hockey camp in July with a camping trip to Greenwater Lake Provincial Park? Yeah, sounds like a pretty good plan. So anyway, so we you know, signed both Andrew and Erica up for this this hockey camp. And you know, Calvington about a half an hour out of Greenwater Lake. So you know, you go to the cabin and it's just great. Oh, you're in the forest, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, come on, get up. Let's get over to Calvington. You drive half an hour into Calvington, and kids go on the ice and do their thing, and you drive back another half hour, pick up the second kid. For gosh sakes, drive them back in for the afternoon session because it's a different group. Oh my gosh. I ended up driving so much. I remember thinking that week, this is just stupid. I want to stay at the lake, but I got to take the kids to hockey. That was one of the few times in my life I've ever, you know, sort of had any regrets about hockey. Anyway, finally I got a break, and I forget now what was, you know, there were no afternoon session or something like that. So I go down to the lake, and I'm just kind of, you know, I'm a little bit burnt out from doing this hockey camp back and forth, back and forth. And I think my wife was staying at the lake with the kids. I was, it was hot, just smoking hot, like probably, you know, 30, 32 degrees or something like that. So I go stand in the lake, and I'm standing there, and there's this older guy there. And it's funny, I should call him older now, but he's probably about, you know, my age now or a little younger. Anyway, so he's standing in the lake there. And so he kind of walks over, and he says to me, he says, "Hey, what's going on? How are you?" I said, "Oh, real good." And he goes, what are you from around here?" I said, "Oh, no, we're from Regina. We're down here for a hockey camp over in Calvington." And he says, "Oh," he goes, "our boys and Barry Melrose used to run that camp." And it kind of clicks into me. I go, "Oh, wait a minute. I think I know who this might be." So I chatted up with him a little bit, and there's me, of all things, you know, aspiring hockey parent, standing in Greenwater Lake, chatting it up with Les Clark, Wendell Clark's dad.
Wow.
I was like, what? Only in Saskatchewan, right? Like, you know, there's
Love
a small town there. This guy'd be legendary, you know, when it comes to, I mean, he had 3 kids that played, you know, pro hockey, and so anyway, so I'm chatting it up with Les Clark, and I said to him, I said, "Well, do you have any advice?" And you know, it's funny. I actually was listening to another podcast with Wendell on it, Wendell and Brett Hull actually, and they were chatting about his dad, and he said, "Well, they changed from cattle and grain farming to just grain, so Les could watch more hockey."
Wow.
And he said, Wendell goes, he says, "My dad never asked what time we got in. He only said to them, 'I know what time you're getting up.'" And so they had to work on the farm, right? And so he knew he'd be getting up at 6 a.m. Didn't matter what time he came in. He'd be still getting up at 6 a.m. So if he got in at 2, you're out feeding cattle in the morning at 6. So anyway, I mean, why did Wendell have such a great work ethic? Why was he, you know, like 15 seasons in the NHL, and, you know, one of the greatest all-time, you know, Leaf stars, you know?
Oh, for sure. I heard also he was an incredible fastball player.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
Calvington. Yeah, I think was it Joey Kosher? I think there's some friends or
He's a
relatives.
cousin.
Yeah.
Kosher is a cousin. Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
I
yeah.
think they like an incredible, I think we're talking Olympic caliber here. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Great athlete. So anyway,
yeah,
I'm chatting it up with Les Clark, right? And I say to him, I said, like, what advice would you give me? And Les gives me kind of a funny look, and he goes, well, he says, for me, I actually stopped going to games. And I said, what? And he goes, no, really. He says, I got so wrapped up in it. I got so wrapped up in the emotions of it
yeah,
that I had to stop. I had to back away, and I stopped going to games. Now, obviously, that changed because Wendell in his interview with Brett Hall, he said his dad wouldn't ask him for tickets. He would, like Wendell would say, well, Dad, do you need tickets to the game? And they're playing Calgary or Edmonton, and his dad would go, no, 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 I'll just go up to the head office and talk to either Glenn Sather or whoever was the GM of the Calgary Flames at the time.
yeah, yeah.
And he said, oh, he'd just walk in there and ask them, those guys, and those guys would give him tickets. So Les was well known.
That's cool.
But yeah, so I mean, Les's advice was just don't get too emotional. Try to stay an even keel. And if you can do that, and you can teach your kid good sportsmanship, I think that has got to be the key. That's got to be the key. And you know what? Give them opportunities. Really, I mean, Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers, 10,000 hours of practice
Yeah,
sets elite, athletes apart from others. And then if that's, if you give your kid opportunities, to shoot pucks in your backyard or skate or whatever, give them opportunities. I don't believe in this whole thing of, well, I'm not going to force my kid to do anything. The whole they get to decide everything. Well, that I don't believe in that either, because what the heck do kids know? Geez, I taught for 27 years. I know that they don't know a whole lot, and they're influenced by you. So give them opportunities, show them what you are passionate about, and if they show an interest in it, and even if they even if it's not that much of an interest, at least it's a thing that gets them active and makes them healthy individuals who learn about sportsmanship.
that's great. Well, man, I think this is a great way to a great note to end our conversation today. And looking forward to sharing more and looking forward to hearing more stories.
Yeah, thank you. I mean,
Yeah,
it's great fun. I mean, you've got a wealth of knowledge when it comes to statistics and on old time hockey and all that kind of stuff. I don't have that background. Like I said, I didn't watch hockey when I was a kid. Really, my parents didn't, my family didn't, so I didn't. But great
I
love
have
for
a
the game.
I have an old. I met an Olympic gold medalist, and his daughter played baseball with my son when they were growing up. And I'm not going to reveal his name, but we were chatting on the sidelines, and he asked me where I was from, and I said, "Oh, I'm from Vermilion, Alberta." And he goes, "Oh, I went to hockey school there." Like, we had a really good hockey school. It was ran by kind of a hockey legend in Alberta, Jim Fleming. And anyway, this guy told me the story of his parents. It reminds me of yours, where they were camping down at the Vermilion Provincial Park. And at that particular time in Vermilion, we had an old theater called the Columbia Theater. And he grew up in a really small town that didn't have a theater. So this was a real treat for his parents. All these hockey parents from their small town are taking all these kids to a Sunday show.
Yeah, yeah.
And anyway, so they pay their money and they go into the show, and they didn't realize, and no one told them this, and the person taking the ticket didn't obviously let them in. Anyway, they start the movie, and back in those days, it was they played like adult movies on Sunday nights. So here's these kids with their popcorn and licorice, and like Linda Lovelace comes on the screen, and the parents have to pull. They're like, "Oh boy, we got to get out of here." So that was a fantastic. I don't have his permission to mention his name, but great person, great human being, Olympic gold medalist. But oh my God, I howled at that story. That's good hockey parenting right there. We're kicking you out. Get out of here. Oh man, that's great. Well, hey, thanks so much for this conversation, and I'm looking forward to our next podcast together.
Everyday hockey. It rules.